Hey, so welcome to my podcast. And
that's not the name of this.
Damn, this is cheesy. So this is not my podcast, it's our podcast where we are going to be talking about whatever the fuck we want to.
So I'm Francisco. I am one of the hosts of this podcast, and this is...
I am Eric. I am the other host.
All right, so this is episode 1. So you want to talk about how do we get our name? Where did our name of our podcast come from? You want to talk about this story?
Do I?
Do you want to talk about it, or do you just want to leave it as a mystery forever and ever?
I mean, that has its advantages too.
I mean, I'm not sure if it's in frame, but we have the sign right behind us.
I mean, it's not my basement; it's our basement.
Okay, so how long ago was this? Probably 6 months? You think it was longer than that? A year ago?
Yeah, think about what was down here at the time.
I don't even know if we had this couch at this point yet.
We didn't. We had
no, because we were sitting on the
table.
I was like, we were sitting at the folding tables with our camping chairs.
Yeah, so like right after we moved in.
Yeah. So okay. So was this the day that we went to Flaming Gorge?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So
it was Jacob's favorite trip.
His favorite trip. So, short story with the Flaming Gorge trip. So there's 4 of us that live here. It's myself, Eric. We got Court, who's helping us with some of the sound tonight, and we have Jacob.
Fucking Ridge.
So, one day, just randomly, we're like, okay, let's go to Flaming Gorge. And so it was us 3, Eric, myself, Court, and Court's girlfriend, Aubrey, that were here. And we're like, all right, we're going to head out to Flaming Gorge. And so we just left. Our roommate was not with us at the time. Jacob was not with us. He was, I believe, working.
You say that, and it sounds like either he hadn't moved in yet or was dead. He was no longer with us.
He was no longer with us at that point. No,
he was no longer with us yet.
He was working, right?
Something like that.
Okay, he was working. We're gonna use that excuse, and we're probably about
halfway.
No shot. Hebrews halfway.
Okay, but like close.
Okay, we're a good 45 minutes of the way in until we finally decided, oh, hey, we should invite our other roommate who we live with all the time and hang out with if he wants to come with us. But by that point, we were too far gone and he was busy with other stuff. End up going to Flaming Gorge. Sick trip.
Hey, we did invite him.
We did invite him a little late, but hey, the thought counts.
Does it?
I think it does. I think it's good enough. So eventually we go there, drive back, and Jacob and our other friend, the dude, are hanging out down here. And so I come downstairs and I'm hanging out with them. I think you came a little bit later because I think it was me, Jacob, and the dude for a while.
Yeah, it was. I think I was unloading stuff, or I don't know.
I don't remember what was happening. But we were down here hanging out for a bit, and I remember
the
dude turned to me and was like, hey, Francisco, thanks for letting us hang out in your basement. And I was like, what? I was like, this is not my basement. I was like, we all live here. Like, this is our basement. And
I was in the room at that moment.
You had come at that point because that was the first moment where you were like, wow, that sounded very communist in what you just said now.
Because at that moment, I ordered this flag.
Correct.
It was at that moment, in my tired state of mind, that I was like, this is what I need tonight. This is exactly what we need in our basement, is a communist flag.
And so I'm not sure I doubt it's in frame. I'm sure you can see this red flag. At the top of this red flag is a sickle and a hammer. Is it a hammer?
Yes.
Okay.
And a star.
And so it is a Soviet Union flag that we bought for $5 off of Amazon at that exact moment. And we decided to put a logo on it I wish it was in frame.
It is duct taped on and it is never coming off.
So it is a picture.
Even if it fell off, it would be put back with more duct tape.
You can see it on our TikTok. It's our logo right now. We're eventually going to do some more stuff with it. But it is a picture of Karl Marx with sunglasses on with the words "my basement" underneath it, and the word "my" is spray painted out with the word "our" put on there. Because it's not my basement, it's our basement.
Sometimes I do impress myself with my ability to steal other people's artwork and then change it enough.
You are really good at that. You are like, that is a skill that you have.
I am a terrible artist, but I am really good at ripping off your art and making it look better.
No, you're actually good at Photoshop, though.
Yeah, but like people who are actually good at Photoshop could make that image from scratch. I can't. Like people use Photoshop to like draw and like paint and stuff. And I'm really good at just like using the tools of Photoshop to my advantage.
Hey, they work good. So Eric also, so I am not in a band, but all of my roommates are all in a band called Atlas. And so Eric is the one who designs all of their album artwork. Sick album artwork.
Though that may not be the case coming up soon, actually.
Are you, who's designing the next?
Jacob's sister might be, she's done some concept art for Jacob for a upcoming single.
A new upcoming unreleased song?
Yeah.
I did not know this.
It involves the mayor holding the world on his back.
Ooh, okay. I do know what this song would be then. I did not. I know Jacob had talked about having his sister if she could come up with some artwork for it.
The first concept of it. And then,
oh, you guys actually have it?
Yeah.
Do you have it on your phone right now? Yeah. Let's pull this up. This could be terrible podcast content.
This is terrible podcast content.
But this is going to be great.
Hold on. I got to go find it. So talk about something.
If needs be, we can cut this out. I actually am just really interested in seeing this. But yeah, they're part of a band. I am their first fan. I don't know if I'm
Initially,
their number one
that's
fan.
what it was, and then swipe one of the directions and you'll see more. And then she made some. I gave some input, and then she made some adjustments.
Is this one the most up to date?
Yeah.
That is a thing to behold. I cannot wait to see this on an album. Whenever this gets released, we'll show it to everyone, but you have to stay tuned.
Right.
If you want to, go to @atlas.mp3 on Instagram and go yell at
There's
Court.
No dot. It's just
no dot @atlasmp3 on Instagram. Go yell at Court to go finish the song.
No, it is a dot.
Gosh. @atlas.mp3 on Instagram.
Come on, Francisco. You know, like the audio format.
Gosh. Okay. Okay. So I don't know what this whole topic is going to be today. So essentially, the way we're thinking about running this podcast is that either me or Eric are going to have an idea, and we're just going to run with a topic on it. So, my idea comes from math. And so, for a little background here, I knew Eric before we moved in together. We worked together as math tutors.
I trained him.
He did. He was my lead tutor when I first started, and I learned some things from him, like, just winging it's fine, just as long as you help people out.
I mean, I don't remember telling you that, but that's very much my style.
That is 100%. The first time you ever observed me, I totally winged a thing, and I thought I did terrible, and you're like, no, that worked out perfectly, type of thing.
Oh, that's fair. Okay. I don't remember this, but apparently I scared you enough to make you remember. I did a lot of observations.
Yeah. So, Eric no longer works there. Eric is an actual full-blown teacher now.
Yeah.
I still work there. And a lot of the people that I work with are people that Eric used to work with. So, the other day, was talking with a couple people. Miles was one of the people that I was talking to.
Okay.
And I gave an opinion that I did not even think was an opinion. Like from
you thought it was a fact.
Like I thought it was a fact. I thought it's like everyone knows this. I'm not crazy. This is just how it is.
Okay, can I give you some advice?
Okay.
If you are ever like thinking, "Oh yeah, I'm not crazy," you are. Without a doubt, if you're ever having to ask yourself that question, you are.
Oh yeah.
Even if you find out after the fact that you aren't, you still are.
True. Okay. Here is the take.
Shoot.
I made the take that trigonometry, the math, is harder than calculus 1. And that was apparently
Ooh.
the huge, like, mind-blowing thing. The 3 people I was talking with, 3 other tutors at that moment,
I have a take on this, but
all
continue.
disagreed.
Okay.
I convinced one of them to be on my side and kind of convinced another one.
Okay, let me make this argument.
Okay.
Or not even this argument. So, with my personal experience, I agree. I think trig made absolutely no sense, and the logic rules of trigonometry did not follow the logical rules of algebra. It wasn't the same brain processes.
Yes.
And that's both anecdotal and actually geometry-based math uses the spatial reasoning part of the brain.
Yes.
Okay? So trigonometry and geometry rely on that portion of the brain heavily.
Correct.
Algebra and calculus don't, and they rely on would be quantitative reasoning.
Yes.
And it's a different part of the brain. So from my experience, it's one or the other.
I 100% agree. And so
either calculus is easier than trig, or it's absolutely not, and you are crazy.
So I was making this as a blanket statement of that for the most, like, majority of people agree with this. Like, if I were to ask a majority of people that took trig and calc 1, which one was tougher, I
Trig.
think most people would
Trig.
say trig. And
however, I do have one counter argument to that.
Let's hear it, because I have a couple logical reasonings for why I think I'm right, but I love hearing the opposite side.
I'm not even arguing that. I just want to point out a flaw in your logic.
Okay.
Thinking from a college major perspective.
Yep.
Think about the number of majors where the last math class required is trigonometry.
This is a great argument. This is one of them that I was using. There's barely any.
Okay. So you're saying there's barely any that require
There's
trig
barely any
without requiring calculus as well. Okay.
Yes. Most from everything that I've looked at is that if you go on to trig, you're 99% likely to have to go on to calculus as well.
Okay, another counterpoint though. I mean, you have encountered this just as much as I have. The freshman who walks in, who's struggling his way through trigonometry.
Absolutely.
And when you ask him what his major is, his response is, mechanical engineering.
Absolutely.
And then at some point in the very near future, he's going to realize he can't handle that math. I think trig is more of a deterrent in that regard than calculus is.
I agree.
And I think, well, I guess I'm just arguing your point at this.
Yeah. Okay. So
you don't have to convince me.
Here's a couple of things that I was trying to convince the people that I was talking about this with first. Number one is, I don't know if this is the best argument or not, but I truly believe that I could go teach the basic calculus concepts to a 5th grader.
Oh, easily. I teach it to my students all the time. I'm like, this is calculus. Ignore the fact it's calculus. It's easy.
Correct. I don't think I could do that with trig. And I mainly talk about this because if we're looking about this as like the tree of math.
I could if I was allowed to use vectors.
You think you can explain to 5th graders vectors?
Oh, easy. Vectors are arrows.
How deep are we talking about with stuff with vectors?
Oh, I'm going to sit down and explain eigenspaces and eigenvalues. No, I'm going to sit down and say we have an arrow. And then let's look at the legs of the triangle that the arrow creates.
Okay, sure. But at that point, you're going to also have to teach them stuff like, I have no idea where this is taught, when this is taught, like the Pythagorean theorem and stuff like that.
Why? I mean, I can easily. That's not hard.
How are you? Okay, so explain to me what you're going to break down with vectors for trig.
So a vector is a quantity represented by an arrow with both a magnitude and a direction. We have an R value and a theta value.
Yep.
Okay. It's very easy to show that as theta approaches 90 degrees, that if we put it on a coordinate axis, at which a triangle does.
Yep.
That as that angle approaches 90, the x-axis portion decreases and gets tiny.
Yes.
Vice versa as we approach 0.
Yep.
That's basic trig.
Okay. Yes. If you're going that basic, I think you can. But if you're going to start talking about,
But if I'm going to explain calculus to a fifth grader, I'm not going to go any deeper than that. I'm going to go that same level because they can't handle the algebra. And
I think they can handle some of the. You don't think you can teach a fifth grader the power rule?
I don't want to teach anyone the power rule.
Why?
Because of the same reason. I am very much of the opinion that nobody actually understands it, but that teaching the limit approximation is a good way of teaching derivatives, which means, and I'm saying that from a physics perspective.
Okay.
Because many, many times we broke derivatives down into an incremental, infinitesimally small step.
Yeah.
And just the fact that knowing that that's what a derivative was it's an infinitely small step over and up, delta epsilon proofs.
Yeah.
So I liked the fact that you were learning that. I don't have the derivative formula memorized. I derive it in my head every single time. It's the position of the function at x plus h minus the position of the function at x over h. Over the quantity of x plus h minus x.
I think that would be very tough to teach to younger people. I was thinking even going more basic than that of like, hey, dude, I don't even know if they talk about slope by 5th grade.
No, they don't. They don't talk about slope until you're in geometry.
Oh, there's no way it's before that. Pre-algebra, they talk about this.
Yeah.
Whenever you take pre-algebra.
7th grade.
I was like, I don't know. I think I took pre-algebra in probably 7th grade. So
I skipped pre-algebra.
Look at you, smarty. But yeah, okay, so that was one thing where I was just like, I think I could teach it to younger people because I think it's easier to understand. For the main reason being that from the moment you step into math, they teach you algebra.
After a long time with arithmetic.
I consider arithmetic as a portion of algebra. Adding and subtracting, multiplying, dividing, all makes sense in that kind of thing. Obviously, you're going to be doing the same thing in trig and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's a different line of thinking. To me, if we're looking at this branch, the branch of math goes from arithmetic and mostly goes towards algebra afterwards. Okay, where geometry is almost straight off from math and trig comes from geometry.
Okay, I will make an argument, however, that this might be a positive feedback loop. In that
it 100% is.
Well, in that, so if you think about what the hardest problems in trig are the problems where they mix trig and algebra. Like you have a quadratic, but instead of you've got a quadratic where you're doing f of cosine of x and then finding the zeros of that function.
Sure, yeah.
Easily one of the harder problems that you could see in a trigonometry class.
Yes.
And so I think part of the problem is that I don't know. I think it just a lot of it comes down to the fact that you and me both succeeded more in algebra, and so we saw algebra more throughout. I would say that people who are more geometrically oriented would say that a lot more of math is about spatial things, because it 100% is, and there's never a time it's not.
But my argument is that from the very beginning, we're primed towards algebra. Think about Jacob. Jacob, again, our roommate, he is in school to become a pilot. Jacob learned most of the stuff he knows about stuff like angles and stuff just recently within the last year or two doing pilot stuff. before, we're not taught that stuff. We're not taught that way of thinking in math throughout school because we're always on the algebra track.
Yeah.
And so that was my main argument for why Calc 1 is easier than Trig. Not because it... I think it might just be
Let me
easy.
say the same thing you're saying in a different words play.
Okay.
We spend 80% of our time in the public education system in math in a rectangular coordinate system. Trigonometry involves a circular coordinate system.
Yes.
So it is therefore harder because we are so much more familiar with the rectangular system.
And that was basically my argument for this whole entire take.
So learn polar coordinates, kids.
Yeah. The main person I was arguing with, he had some different topics. One of them, we were like, okay, could we ever actually prove this? I don't think we can ever actually prove this type of thing. I think there's too many
well, they prove
different
shit in
data.
biology, so
What'd you say?
they prove shit in biology, so we probably can.
Okay, so again, from a math thinking background, I don't think you could ever prove this. From a stats thinking background, probably can't as well.
Oh,
I feel
okay.
I feel like there's too many different other variables that would impact any type of data you would gather from this. Because the main argument they had is like, let's go look at the fail rates for these classes in college, which I do not think is a good one because Calc 1, I think, is the second most failed class in the entire like college system. It's
okay,
it's
not
top
at
3.
UVU.
It's top 3 at UVU.
Because my dad has told me it. I don't know if it's still the case, and I probably am. This is probably tainted by memory, but my dad has told me that the top 2 most failed classes are CS 1400 is number 2. Number 1 is 1050. Math 1050.
And I'm pretty sure Calc 1 is number 3.
Okay, that wouldn't. Surprise me.
I'm pretty sure those 3 are the top 3.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all.
But I don't think that is a good proof.
No, it's not.
That Calc 1 is tougher. I think it's a point in the Trig is easier than Calc favor, but I think mainly due to the fact that everyone that takes Trig is going to have to go on to Calc as well.
Yeah.
Kind of throws all this data off and is whacked with it type of thing.
Yeah, that's true. However, you know one thing I always hated about trigonometry is that there were so many things in there which turned out to be useful in other places, but they just teach that don't make any sense. And they're just like, why are you talking about this? Like, why do they talk about imaginary numbers? They don't ever tell you. Imaginary numbers are just trig, and I learned that in physics. But like, you randomly start talking about REI theta, and nobody connects that. Like, and they even use the cosine plus I sine theta to like expand it, and nobody understands what's going on.
No, because it's just like at that point, at that point, you're not ready to learn that stuff when you're taking trigonometry the first time. Most people aren't going to be at that point where any of this is going to
understand why it works in trig. You have to understand what the imaginary plane is.
Correct,
and which isn't that hard, but
it takes time.
It takes time, and you have to understand the concept of orthogonality.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is so much more than perpendicular.
I'll take your word for it. Whenever I heard orthogonality in any of my classes, I was just like, oh yeah, it just has nothing to deal with this other direction.
But that's what it is so this is going to go deeper than we need to. So they teach you in basic physics and in most math classes that a vector is a magnitude and direction thing.
Yes.
That's not true.
What is it then? A
vector, we have to expand. Before we can define a vector, we have to define a vector space.
Oh, geez. Okay, we're getting into linear algebra now.
Getting into I haven't taken linear algebra, but we're getting into the linear algebra as it should be.
Did you never have to take linear algebra?
No, I had to take mathematical physics, which is linear algebra, partial differential equations, and some other random stuff all shoved into one just
How-
monstrous class.
How does UVU not have you guys do linear
No.
algebra?
It's because we take mathematical physics.
Okay, I took like mathematical stats and I had to do all this other stuff before I got to that point.
Yeah, but
I had to go take linear algebra before I took those classes. Because we deal with stuff that has to do with linear algebra, but they're not just. I'm mind blown that they're just like, oh, they'll teach it to you there type of thing. Linear algebra is a tough thing to learn.
That's very much what the mathematical physics class is. It's we don't have time for you to go get a math minor.
Jeez.
Because
Is it a 2-semester class?
mathematical physics?
Yeah.
No.
They do it all in one semester.
It's brutal.
Wow.
Easily one of the hardest classes I took.
Oh my gosh.
A vector space is a collective of independent things that can be represented by a numerical amount.
Okay.
So the example that we used then and that I still think of that works really well is think about a recipe.
Okay.
A recipe is a vector number. Because can you replace eggs with flour?
No.
Can you replace flour with eggs?
No.
They are
Orthogonal.
They are distinct. They are not all on the same plane.
Okay.
So to get to the position of a cake,
You need both
You need-
portions.
we can have an infinite number of dimensions.
Yeah.
There's nothing that says that a vector needs to be anything spatial.
And as long as they are, every dimension is distinct from one another.
They are all orthogonal.
Okay. I've never heard the recipe one, but it makes sense.
It makes sense. And so that's when you realize that, it's like, oh, and you have to, in order to understand quantum mechanics, you have to be able to think about vectors that way. Because quantum mechanics, you're looking at different orthogonalities that a quantum particle may have.
Okay.
And stuff gets kind of trippy because it's quantum mechanics. But you have to, so everything you're dealing with in quantum mechanics, you're dealing with a probability vector.
Okay.
Which is, you've got probability amplitudes that exist both in the real and on the imaginary plane. Don't ask. And they are assigned to different vector space or vector pieces. They're called eigenvectors.
Okay.
Which are just the individual portions.
Yep.
So oftentimes we'd have a plus or a minus x.
Okay.
Or whatever it was, and we could have a lot depending on what system we were looking at. Another example of what you could look at is let's say if you have a water molecule.
Okay.
Water molecules have, so they're called degrees of freedom of vibration.
Okay.
So if you think about a water molecule, you've got so if this is our oxygen, this is our hydrogen.
Yep.
We can get this vibration.
Okay.
We can have this vibration.
Okay.
We can have this vibration.
Okay.
Right?
Sure.
So that's at least 3 on that half of the molecule.
Yeah.
Then we could have those 3 over here.
Yes.
Then we could have the molecule flexing like this. And I think I don't remember exactly the number, but I think it's like 18.
Jeez.
It has 18 degrees of freedom. So if you want to describe the specific vibration of any given hydrogen molecule,
you would need an 18 length vector.
You would need a vector with 8 separate eigenvectors.
8 or 18?
18 separate eigenvectors.
Jeez.
And so it breaks you out of the thought process of there only being so many spatial vectors that you can deal with, or even a vector function. Like you learn in multivariable calculus that you can do calculus with any number of variables, and you're like, why would I ever have more than like 3? But when you get into a vector function where you've got 30,
it
doesn't matter. Calculus still obeys the same rules. Typically, a lot of the functions we were dealing with were 4-variabled because they were parametric. They had a position value and a time value. So
three position, one time.
Three position vectors and one time vector.
Okay. Jeez. Linear algebra. That's another. Okay. That's not a controversial take. We're not, because when we were talking about this topic about trig and calc 1, at first, so I was talking about it with 3 people. Initially, when one of them was disagreeing with me, he thought I meant calculus as a whole.
Yeah.
That trig was harder than calculus as a whole. Absolutely not. Because the baby of trig and calc 1 is calc 2, which is probably the toughest lower division math class there is. The only one that I can see that can compete with it is linear algebra.
I was going to say linear algebra is technically lower division.
Correct.
I would say that.
I was like, those are the only 2 that can really compete.
What's PDEs?
PDE is 3,000.
Okay, that's what I thought.
ODE is 2,000.
Yeah, but ODEs is easy.
ODE is easy, and I literally I took the class, passed it, and I don't remember nothing from it. Absolutely nothing.
I thought ODEs was actually really fun, which was good because I hated my professor in that class, and I took it over the summer at an 8 a.m. section.
Oh, jeez.
And so, but I realized after reading the syllabus and whatnot, I didn't need to go to class except on test days.
Yeah.
So I didn't. Turned in all of the homework on time. And I didn't copy the homework from the internet.
Yeah.
I had a solutions manual, and I would refer to that if I needed it, and I would read the textbook. Imagine that. And I would follow the examples, and then I taught it to myself.
So I took ODE during COVID semester.
Yeah.
So the semester where March came around, school shut down within like 4 days type of thing.
Were you using the same textbook that I did?
Yes.
Were you using my textbook?
No.
Did I give you my solutions manual?
No.
Why didn't I give you my solutions manual?
That was fine. I could deal with it at the time.
You had Slater.
I had yeah, so well I
upstairs I have a full worked out solutions manual for the entire book.
Well, I'm pretty sure you have my ODE book right now. I think you borrowed it a couple weeks ago. Someone borrowed it a couple weeks ago. I don't know who else would have.
I had my own ODE book.
I don't know. Someone did. It's gone. Someone stole it. But no, so I took it then. I literally never in my entire time. Okay, I was a bad student in high school. We won't deal with that. But in my entire time in college, I never read a single textbook until that COVID semester. And it's like these teachers, the teacher I had, sweet, sweet old lady. She's old little lady. I think she was like 4'6" or something like that.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
But she could not do online stuff.
She couldn't turn a projector on in the classroom.
Correct. Like the grades, she would not post our grades until the very end of the semester. I had her for Calc 2 and ODE, and I never knew what grade I had until literally I got them on the report card after the semester.
Yeah.
But that was like one of the first classes where I actually read the textbook, and I was like, wow, sometimes reading a textbook can really help you type of thing. Kind of sucks that it was my last my last semester of being an undergraduate.
Okay, here's an interesting question for you.
Okay.
If the student that you are now could restart college,
okay,
how would your first semester, first year change?
Okay, so
because I would have been a very different student.
Are we going back?
Yep, all the way.
So we're going back in time to fall of
2015?
2014.
Oh, 2014, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
be fall of 2016 for me.
Yeah, for you, because you went on your mission. Wow. Okay. Number one. So I, for multitude different reasons, decided to go to a junior college in Las Vegas where I grew up.
Yeah.
I also at that time was like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to major in. I've barely thought about this. I played baseball for most of my life. I I don't know what I want to do. So what do you do when you don't know what to do? Oh, you become a business major because that's what everyone does, type of thing.
Or an engineer.
Yes.
And then you fail out of engineering and you become a business major.
Well, okay, so from my perspective, the way I saw it was like, okay, I'm not gonna say most everyone. A lot of people become business majors and either you end up liking it.
God, those classes sound so boring.
They're pretty boring. So you either like it, you don't like it, but you realize that too late, or you don't like it, realize it early, and then switch off. I didn't hate my business classes, but I never liked them. So if I can remember what some of the classes I took an English class that first semester. I took an intro to business class. I didn't take an astronomy class then. I don't remember. But the main thing that I would have done is I obviously wouldn't have been a business major. I probably would have just gone and taken my generals at that time and not taken any business classes going through. Because what kind of sucked is that I did 50 credits down there. So I did 1 semester full time. I dropped out for a year, came back, and then I did 3 semesters part time down there. And so what kind of sucked is that when I finally came out here to UVU, like an actual university, full-blown college experience, I had no more generals. Well, I had a few generals, but I also had no more electives to do. So I came out here and I hopped into basically taking nonstop math classes forever and ever and ever and ever. And that's rough when you're taking 5 upper division math classes in a semester, like math and stat classes. Wild experience, but
I mean, I did that with upper division physics, and
Yeah.
it was brutal.
yeah. But I think that would have been the main thing. I haven't necessarily thought of this question, but I think my mom always asked me different things about like if you could go back, because she obviously, like any mom would, didn't want me to drop out when I did. I think I probably still would drop out for that year.
Yeah.
While that was a sucky year, there's a lot of things that happened during that year that in the long run did help out, type of thing.
Yeah.
And so I think even knowing everything I do now, I probably still would go there, change a little bit, stop school, and probably go back eventually.
Do you feel like you would have been a better student?
I kind of forced myself to be a good student once
Okay.
I got into college. Like I've told you about some of the stories of stuff I did in high school to get by. College, I really didn't have that because it's like at that point I didn't know anyone. All of my friends had already graduated the year before and some of them had like gone off to play baseball, join the army, do other things. So it's like I didn't know anyone at the school I went to. So it's not like I could fall back on like, hey, can I copy your homework type of thing? Can I do this? Can I do that? So I kind of forced myself of like, oh, I actually have to be a good student now type of thing. I still didn't study at that point because classes were dumb easy.
Yeah. I didn't, at that point, I didn't know how to study.
Oh, no shot.
So I think that's something that would have changed if I was to go back to my start.
Yeah.
Is I would have studied differently for tests and things.
Yeah.
And you know how they always tell you to make study groups and then you never make a study group until you realize that that's the way to go. And then you are like, where's this been my entire life?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have made study groups earlier.
Okay.
That's one piece of advice that I got so often. Like every class, like the professor at the beginning is like, I highly encourage you to make study groups. No one ever does.
Yeah.
And then there's that one kid who's like really enthusiastic about it and like sends out messages on Canvas and trying to make it happen. You're like, this is why you're single, Rodney.
Oh.
So yeah.
I was having this conversation with Miles.
Yep.
So Miles is one of our friends. He's someone that I still work with tutoring. So me and him took a couple classes together over the summer, and we basically worked on everything together type of thing.
There's no reason not to.
Yeah, and I have always been a person where I had done some study groups. There was like, I graduated the stats degree. There was like 7 people that graduated with me. And so us 7 people had the same classes for 2 years.
Yeah, that's how it was for physics.
Yeah. And so sometimes you'd go and you'd like do study groups with them, but most of the time, most of these people are pretty introverted is not the right word, but a lot of them are, but they're very like
Reserved.
There's another word, I can't think of it. Whatever. And so most people just do stuff on their own. And I get more stuff done on my own than working with other people, even if other people are like
Yes.
working on different things together.
No, I 100% agree.
What always,
but when I work through it with someone else, I learn it better.
it's not even that for me. So one thing that I think I am better at than most people is that I learn quicker than other people.
Yeah.
Like I can pick stuff up quicker than people. And so what always helped me with study groups is that we'd all be working on something. I'd pick something up, and then I would have to be the one that kind of explains it to other people.
Yeah.
And if anyone's done any teaching or tutoring ever, having to explain something to someone makes you learn it so much better.
Yeah.
And so that I really like doing that. Number one, I like helping people, and so helping other people learn, like I was happy with that. It made me feel good. But it also was that thing of like, oh, I'll learn this quick. I'll teach it to them, which will also benefit me type of thing, because I'll be able to learn it even better than I already had.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I told Miles that over the summer. I was like, I really liked working with you. First of all, I'm not the easiest person to get along with sometimes, especially when we're working on stuff that's more intensive type of thing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like working with him like really helped. It was actually really great. It was a really good time. Learned a lot. Pretty easy too. And it's like, maybe it is because of like the whole study group of like, hey, we just were able to learn it better type of thing. But
I mean, 2 brains, that's twice the working memory.
yeah.
That means you're getting double out of lecture. Maybe probably not quite double, but more than 1.
Yeah. Yeah, it was an experience, especially for both of us taking a year off of school again.
Yeah.
After everything. But yeah, it was a time.
Sounds like it.
Well, I don't know if you got anything more you want to talk about.
I'm an old man. I got to go to bed so I can go to work and teach the youths.
Teach the youngins.
They trust me with the youths.
That's a scary thought sometimes.
Sometimes. All right, that's our podcast.
Bye.